Let's discuss whether there is any link between violence on the screen and real violence.
The video games, the movies, the internet stuff is so violent.
Do violent video games influence violence? With all the violence happening in the world, like school shootings, could there be a link between the two? Are video games to blame for these violent acts? Blood and gore, intense violence, strong sexual content, use of drugs. These are just a few of the phrases that the Entertainment Software Rating Board uses to describe the content of several games in the Grand Theft Auto series, one of the most popular video game series among teenagers. The Pew Research Center reported in 2008 that 97% of youth ages 12 to 17 played some type of video game, and that 2/3 of them played action and adventure games that tend to contain violent content. Other research suggests that boys are more likely to use violent video games and play them more frequently than girls. A separate analysis found that more than half of all video games rated by the ESRB contained violence, including more than 90% of those rated as appropriate for children 10 years or older. According to the Journal of American Medical Association, states that at least 60% of middle school boys and 40% of middle school girls who have played at least one mature rated game hit or beat up someone. When that data was compared to 39% of the boys and 14% of the girls who did not play an M-rated game, showed that they had a least chance of violent behavior. The study also stated that habitual violent games playing had a causal link with increased long-term aggressive behavior. So we've heard about Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, Far Cry, Fallout. All these games are very, very violent, but they don't necessarily seem to cause or influence violence in the real world. I mean, there was a 2015 study found that in the months after popular violent video games are released, aggravated assault and homicide rates tend to drop. The researchers behind the study said the explanations for this correlation are complicated, and some scientists think that people might experience some aggression, reducing catharsis from playing violent video games. Others say the aggressive people might seek out violent media and then play games instead of engaging in behavior that might lead to criminal activity. Either way, there doesn't seem to be any increase in criminal activity associated with playing violent video games. Violent video games may not create or influence violence, but it does seem to have a slight increase in aggression, though aggression is not the same as evidence. On a review research by the American Psychological Association found that people who played violent video games were very slightly more likely to engage in aggressive behavior. Actions like playing a loud sound that people were competing against could hear over an audio system. However, the APA said playing games was not enough to cause aggression. Other studies have found no link between game violence and violent or aggressive thoughts. Some researchers, like APA member Chris Ferguson, have even disputed finding connecting games to aggression, saying many of the studies that drew such conclusions had methodological problems. Either way, aggressive behavior is not the same as violence. According to Christopher J. Ferguson, PhD and psychology professor at the University of Stetson, studies claiming a causal link between video game violence and real-life violence are flawed. Many studies fail to control factors that contribute to children becoming violent, such as family history and mental health. Stating further, he explains, matching video game conditions more carefully in experimental studies with how they are played in real life makes violent games' effects on aggression essentially vanish. A new research study published in the journal Psychology of Media Culture takes a comprehensive look at different risk factors of violence, including playing video games. Whitney D. Camp of Western Michigan University used data taken from 2008 to assess violence risk in 6,567 grade 8 children. Students were asked about violent and pre-violent behavior. An example, hit someone with the intention of hurting them, take some kind of weapon to school or to a school event, and carry a gun when you're not in school. Along with asking each participant whether they played a mature video game in the previous year, they were questioned about their home and school environment. Participants completed measures of impulsiveness and sensation seeking, including items such as the following. I sometimes do crazy things just for fun, or I like to try to do things even if they scare me, or I know it's something I shouldn't do. I get a real kick out of doing things that are a little dangerous, and I like to have new exciting experiences even if they are illegal. The researchers also looked at parental monitoring and parental attachment by questioning participants how they interacted with their parents and the kind of relationship they had with them. Since males in the study were far more likely to play M-rated games, 79% of males versus 33% of females, the study data was analyzed separately for males and females. According to the study results, playing violent video games didn't appear to be related to any of the violent behaviors that the researchers examined. For both male and females, the two factors most successfully in predicting risk of hitting someone in the previous year were seeing or hearing violence at home and being high in sensation seeking. For participants who admitted to taking weapons to school in the previous year, high sensation seeking and low parental monitoring seemed to be the best predictors in males, while low parental attachment and high sensation seeking were strong predictors in females. Males were high in sensation seeking were also most likely to report having carried a gun in the previous year. For females, the only factors that came close were low parental attachment and parental monitoring. Overall, this research showed that the presumed danger of violent video game playing was largely exaggerated, at least in the 8th graders looked at in the study. Other factors such as seeing or hearing violence at home, sensation seeking, and low parental monitoring or attachment were far more likely to predict violence in adolescence. According to Stanford University psychologist Albert Bandura, now 89, whose experimental studies in the early 1960s established the theoretical basis for limiting kids' access to violent media. In a 1961 study, Bandura and his colleagues gathered 72 preschoolers. Laboratory assistants led the kids one at a time into a playroom where they sat at a small table and received instruction on how to make potato print pictures. I know what you're thinking. If I was a kid and forced into a small room to make potato print pictures, I'd be pretty pissed off too. Anyway, soon another adult entered the room and settled into the opposite corner with a Tinker Toy set, a mallet, and a 5-foot inflatable Bobo clown doll, the kind that rights itself if knocked over. That's really creepy. The adult then either quickly assembled the Tinker Toys, ignoring Bobo, or turned to the doll and began aggressing toward it, punching it, sitting on it, kicking it around the room, all the while saying things such as, "Sock him in the nose," and "Pow." After 10 minutes, each child was led into another room and invited to play with some relatively attractive toys, such as a fire engine, a spinning top, and a doll set. But after 2 minutes, a lab assistant announced that these were her very best toys and that she decided to reserve them for other children. The kids were swept into her third room and held more toys, both aggressive and non-aggressive. A tea set, crayons, dart guns, a mallet, and a 3-foot Bobo doll. Again with their creepy doll. Anyway, you see where this is going. Faced with the frustration of having nice toys suddenly snatched away, the preschoolers who had watched Bobo get mistreated were more likely than the others to take out their aggression on the mini Bobo doll. Bandura repeated the experiment in 1963 using film and cartoon depictions of Bobo's mistreatment, with similar results. The conclusion seemed clear. Watching unchecked aggression in real life on film or in cartoons makes us more aggressive because it provides us with social scripts to guide our behavior. Bandura's conclusion opened a floodgate of media effects research that continues today. Okay, alright, I get it. The kids were stuffed in a small room with a creepy clown doll and forced with other kids to make potato pictures and share their nice toys? I'd be one angry kid too. I'd beat the hell out of that doll, especially if it's a clown. I mean, really, name one kid that really likes clowns. No one likes clowns. Anyway, but playing violent video games or watching media, that doesn't necessarily mean that someone's going to be influenced enough to go out and create a mass shooting or kill someone. Playing violent video games does not cause kids to commit mass shootings. Over 150 million Americans and 71% of teens play video games. There have been 71 mass shootings between 1982 and August 2015, 7 of which involved shooters age 18 or younger. Catherine Newman, PhD, Dean of Arts and Sciences at Johns Hopkins University, wrote, "Millions of young people play video games full of fistfights, blazing guns, and body slams. Yet only a minuscule fraction of the consumers become violent." A report by the Secret Service and U.S. Department of Education examined 37 incidents of targeted school violence between 1974 and 2000. Of the 41 attackers studied, 27% had an interest in violent movies, 24% in violent books, and 31% exhibited interest in their own violent writings, while only 12% showed interest in violent video games. The report did not find a relationship between playing violent video games and school shootings. An April 2015 peer-reviewed study published in the Psychiatric Quarterly found that playing violent video games had no impact on hostility levels in teenagers. So, with this information, how could we better influence younger generations to be less violent? What could be used to help influence these children to a better path or better direction in their lives? There are many areas in which one could educate a person in order to prevent violence. One way is through impulse control and anger management classes. It is important to note, however, that taking proper role models can be a key to young adults when they are attempting to attain these skills in a class. Having an appropriate role model will not allow them to seek advice, but will give them someone to mirror themselves after and witness their appropriate behaviors in the face of problems, conflict, anger, and stress. A few examples of some great role models are parents, teachers, and close family friends. Education is very important. It is the foundation for everything. And some of the most important things come from education, such as knowledge and skills and health behaviors. In addition to being prepared for better jobs, people with more education are more likely to learn about healthy behavior. Educated patients may be more able to understand their health needs, follow instructions, advocate for themselves and their families, and communicate effectively with healthcare providers. Healthier neighborhoods, probably one of the most important ones. Lower income and fewer resources mean that people with less education are more likely to live in low-income neighborhoods that lack the resources for good health. These neighborhoods are often economically marginalized and segregated and have more risk factors for poor health, such as less access to supermarkets or other resources or healthy food, and an oversupply of fast food restaurants and outlets that promote unhealthy foods. Low-income areas, which are more populated by people with less education, often suffer from shortages of primary care physicians and other healthcare providers and facilities. Higher crime rates, exposing residents to greater risk of trauma and deaths from violence and the stress of living in unsafe neighborhoods. People with less education, particularly males, are more likely to be incarcerated, which carries its own public health risks. So, education is very important. There is immeasurable amount of evidence to support why education is very important to all of us. Education is the foundation of all our lives and everything that we know and everything that we will know. In conclusion, it seems that there are mixed reviews pertaining to the link between media violence and violence in the real world. Yes, it seems fair to conclude that violent video games does increase aggression. However, aggression is not the same as violence. With a higher education comes with a better understanding of life and social skills, and better jobs and better income, which is less stress and less problems in life in general. There is not enough evidence to support the video games influencing violent acts within the real world.